What's up guys, I'm Justin Burkholtz. Today's video is about the basics of traditional yoga philosophy and practice, specifically as taught by Swami Vivekananda and based on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Now I did make another video on this topic that covers all of this in much more depth, but it's a really long video and I know not everyone wants to watch a whole hour-long video to learn more about yoga, so I decided to make a condensed version today and just kind of go over the basics. But if you want to learn more, there will be a link in the description to the other video I made called Yoga Beyond Posture, and I'll go into much more depth on all of these topics. But before we get to the good stuff, if you're interested in mysticism, history of religion, spiritual practices, or science-based protocols for improving longevity, health, and wellness, and want to support my effort to bring this content in an accessible format to a wide audience for free here on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and consider supporting me on Patreon or with a one-time donation. Those links can be found below. Okay, so I'm sure you've at least heard of yoga before. You've probably even tried it out in a studio or by following a video on YouTube or something like that. I know that's how I was originally exposed to yoga. It has become extremely popular in the last couple of decades all around the world. But it's really only one small part that actually has become popular. Most people know it as a form of exercise consisting of stretches and postures, but that's really only one small fraction of what falls under the vast umbrella of yoga, and it's just meant to be one part of the practice. So what I want to talk about is everything else. We'll cover asana or posture a little bit as well, but I really want to cover all 8 limbs of traditional yoga philosophy and practice so that you can see what yoga is really about and how to get the most out of your practice if that's something you do. Yoga means union with God, or to yoke with God, and that is the aim or goal of all teachings of yoga. Okay, so yoga paths are specific sets of teachings meant to help bring people closer to God. And there are countless paths of yoga. You've probably heard quite a few. But there's said to be 4 main paths. Some of the others kind of fall under these categories. So there's karma, jnana, raja, and bhakti. And today's video is going to be about Raja Yoga, as taught by Swami Vivekananda and based on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, like I stated before. So Vivekananda was one of the first people to come from India and teach Vedanta and yoga in Europe and in the Americas. He traveled all across the United States at the end of the 19th century, very beginning of the 20th century, and he gave lectures on Hinduism, Vedanta, and yoga, and established the very first Vedanta societies in the U.S., both on the East Coast and the West Coast. Patanjali was an ancient Hindu mystic and philosopher and is the author of the Yoga Sutras, which he compiled and organized from earlier sources. So he's one of the first people to take all of the disparate teachings on yoga that existed, kind of compile them into one tome, into one system. So that's why the Yoga Sutras are so great. They're very organized and very specific and pragmatic. So they're really cool. In fact, I highly recommend this copy here if you're looking for a translation, if you want to dive into them yourself, by Georg Feuerstein. He's a really well-known scholar of Hinduism, and he wrote a great academic translation of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras if you want to learn more directly from the source. Most scholars believe that Patanjali wrote the Yoga Sutras sometime between the 2nd and 4th centuries CE or AD, so they're just a little bit less than 2,000 years old, but like I said, the information was actually compiled from earlier sources. So these teachings on yoga go back pretty much into prehistory in Indian philosophy. But Vivekananda was known for focusing on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and is actually credited with bringing them out of relative obscurity. They had been very popular and influential for a time, and then, over the centuries in India, they had kind of fallen out of favor and out of practice, and were kind of unknown for around 700 years, according to scholars, until Vivekananda revived them, and today they are extremely popular. I have a few different translations myself, along with commentary, and they're really great to dig into, so I definitely recommend that. Okay, so according to their teachings, there are 8 limbs to yoga practice. So if you've ever heard of Ashtanga yoga, it's something I've heard people mention. That Ashtanga just means 8-limbed. So it's talking about these 8 parts of the yoga practice. So those 8 limbs are avoidances, or yama, observances, or niyama, posture, or asana, breath and energy control, which is pranayama, sense withdrawal, which is pratyahara, concentration, which is dharana, meditation, which is dhyana, and absorption, or samadhi. Okay, so those are the 8 limbs of traditional yoga. Once again, if you want to learn more about all of those, go check out my other video. The first 2 limbs, though, the yama and niyama, are broken down into further distinctions. So there are 5 of each. And you can kind of think of these as like the do's and don'ts of yoga philosophy. So the yama are things that we shouldn't do, and the niyama are things that we should do. All right, so starting with the 5 yama, or avoidances. So once again, these are things that you should not do according to traditional yoga philosophy. So those are: do no harm, or ahimsa; don't lie, or satya; don't steal, or asteya; practice sexual restraint, or brahmacharya; and don't be possessive, or aparigraha. Okay, so those are the 5 things that you want to avoid. And the reason for all of this, for all 8 limbs, but especially for the yama and niyama, these are kind of guidelines to cultivate a life of peace and stillness, to help you on your path of being closer to God. So the whole point of yoga, according to Patanjali, is to still the movements of the mind so that you can realize the true nature of the divine. This is basically equivalent to the Christian saying of "be still and know that I am God." So you can't really gain contact with the divine unless you still all of the chatter and monkey mind and everything that's going on in your head. So the whole point of yoga is to develop a lifestyle and a practice for stillness. So the lifestyle brings stillness overall in your everyday life and every moment, and then in specific moments of meditation and yoga practice, you want to further still those movements down as much as possible. So that's the point of yogic meditation. So those were the 5 yama, but there are 5 niyama as well. So these are things that you should do, and those are the first one is purity, or shaucha. Second is contentment, or santosha. Third is self-discipline, or tapas. Study of self and scripture, or svadhyaya. And devotedness to God, or isvara pranidhana. Okay, and the point of all of those, once again, is not to be dogmatic or legalistic. It's practical. It's a guideline so that the way that you live your life will be conducive to peace and stillness and meditation. All right, so moving on from there, we do get to the one limb that everyone knows well. So that's asana, or posture. Now, this is the limb that covers all of the postures and stretches that have become so popular. However, in the Yoga Sutras, there is very little explanation given here. The only instructions given are basically that you should find a position in which you can sit still and comfortably for an extended period of time for meditation. That's it. All right. So for most people, that's going to be a simple seated posture, kind of like how I'm sitting in a chair right now. You just want to make sure that your spine and head and neck are aligned and that you're sitting up. You don't want to be leaning over or have your back, C-shaped or anything like that. So make sure that you're straight and comfortable and you can sit still and comfortably for a long period of time. For most people here in the Americas or Europe, the so-called West, it's going to be really difficult to do that just sitting on the ground, especially kind of cross-legged or something like that. That's going to get really uncomfortable for a lot of people. So I do recommend getting a meditation pillow, a zafu or something like that, so that you can sit comfortably if you need, or you can just do it in a chair. And I like to put like a pillow behind my back to be able to sit straight in a chair. Next we come to pranayama, or control of our breath and life force and energy. And people are starting to learn about pranayama recently, especially with the popularity of breath work in the last couple of years, with like Wim Hof style breathing, or even there's been a lot of research coming out recently about cyclic sigh practices, or box breathing has been around for a while and in the news. So all of those are forms of breath work, but those would all fall under the umbrella of pranayama as well. So in traditional yogic pranayama, there are hundreds of different styles of breathing, cycles of breathing, different kinds of breathwork practices, and they all have different effects. So one of the things that people are just starting to realize as they're getting interested in breathwork is that each breathwork practice is good for one specific thing. It's a tool and it has a specific purpose. So something like the Wim Hof style breathing is a form of cyclic hyperventilation. That's going to get your blood flow going. It's going to get your heart rate up. It's going to release a lot of adrenaline. And that's good for certain things. It's good for helping you deal with states of high anxiety. It's good with waking you up in the morning, stuff like that. But it's not going to, for instance, calm you down for meditation. So Wim Hof style or cyclic hyperventilation is probably not the kind of breath work you want to do while meditating or right before meditating, because it's going to really get a lot of energy going in your body. So traditionally they would actually recommend box breathing. That has been around just as it's practiced today for at least a couple thousand years. It was definitely taught in ancient India, and it was a part of classic yoga practice. And so box breathing is very simple and easy. It's just even counts of inhale, hold, exhale, and hold. So you can inhale for 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. Repeat. And that's going to bring you into a really calm, balanced state no matter where you were before. So that's a really good pranayama technique for during or before meditation for yoga. All right, after that is sense withdrawal, which is the practice of internalizing the senses and bringing them inside instead of focusing on external objects and sensations. So this is commonly done in traditional yogic practice by bringing the attention and focus to the third eye chakra, or the point between and slightly above the eyes, but inside your skull. So the point of your focus should literally be your brain. And the reason for this actually is that that's the one part of your body, the one organ that does not have direct sensory perception. So when you bring your focus away from sensations, touch, sight, sound, smell, etc., and into that point, you're focusing your attention on the one place within your actual body where you can't actually feel physical sensations because your brain does not have nerve endings sensitive to touch. Okay, so this has a specific effect of increasing your ability to focus, and It brings your attention away from sensations that can be very distracting and into a place that's more calm and still, or at least it can be after you have some practice. At first, it might be chaotic because your attention will be brought to your thoughts, which can be fast and crazy and chaotic. But as you practice yoga, those will still down and become more calm, and you'll be able to find that place of internalizing your senses more quickly and more calmly than at first. Okay. The next three limbs are concentration, meditation, and absorption or samadhi. And they make up what is known as samyama. Now, concentration or dharana is simply the act of bringing your attention to focus on something. Okay, so that could be something external. You could, have a candle lit and focus on that as the object of your meditation and just bring your eyes and your attention to that candle. Or like we just spoke about in the previous limb of pratyahara or sense withdrawal, you can bring your attention to your third eye chakra or to your heart chakra. Either one of those would be traditional in yogic practice. And so concentration is just the act of bringing your attention to that point. After that, meditation or dhyana is just holding your attention to that object of focus. So they speak of it in traditional yogic philosophy as like letting your consciousness flow towards that focal point. So once again, if this is your third eye, it's just keeping your attention there instead of letting it get caught up in the thoughts and stuff that'll try and distract you. All right, and then the last limb is absorption or samadhi. And the reason all three of these are together is that it's not something you just do once and then move on to the next stage linearly. They're going to kind of cycle through each other all the time. So absorption comes when you're so focused and you've kept your consciousness and your attention focused for long enough that the boundary between yourself and your object and the world and everything just kind of fades away and dissolves. And all that's left is just a pure awareness. And that's what's called samadhi. But you can't maintain that for very long. If you hear something or something happens or some thought comes in your mind, you get distracted, you're going to come back down from that state very quickly. And that's okay. That's totally normal. And it's actually even preferred, I would say. Because the first act of dharana or concentration, bringing your mind to a focus, is where a lot of the benefits from meditation come in. So those three happen in a cycle. You bring your mind to a focus, you hold your attention there, maybe you experience samadhi for a second or 30 seconds or whatever, and then your attention gets drawn away, then you have to bring your focus back. So you start over back at concentration, meditation, samadhi. Right? So that's how it works. And those are the basics of traditional Raja Yoga. So yoga is a rich and powerful spiritual tradition when it is practiced in its entirety. And if you're interested in learning more, definitely check out my video, Yoga Beyond Posture, where I dive into all of this and much more, into a lot more detail. But like I said, I wanted to do something short and sweet for you guys to give you a taste of what's out there and how much deeper your yoga practice can be if you just know about the whole system. All right, well, thank you for watching. That's it for this video. If you have any questions, please leave those in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. And once again, thank you so much for visiting my channel and supporting my work. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and that little notification bell so you don't miss any of the other upcoming content. If you would like to support me on Patreon or with a one-time donation, there are links below for that as well. And once again, a huge thank you to my current patrons. Your support is greatly appreciated, and I hope that you continue to enjoy my work. Hope you guys have a good week.